Hello out there in YouTube land. This is Forrest. Normally, I don't like to answer things like emails and stuff, with like if they're really long. I don't like to type it all out because I'm not very good at typing, to be honest with you. Like two hands, so I'm not very good at it. Plus, it kind of loses something when you type something to somebody like that. And I'd rather respond in video form. So what I thought I would do is post this video as an answer to one of the investor owners that owns some property that we manage. There's to kind of run it down without giving away where the farm's location's at, so somebody goes and steals all the fruits and vegetables off the farm. But they have 20 doors basically, and I need to set the stage a little bit on this video. So they have 20 doors, and it's in an area of Jacksonville where the incomes are not very high. It's a very low income area. There are places that rent for more than these places, but as I get into the minutiae of this, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to kind of go through this email that I got from this owner, and of course I'm going to send a link to the owner, so the owner, hey owner, they'll be able to watch this and understand better what I'm talking about. And they're going through some of the things that a lot of owners go through, especially down in this particular zip coded area, which is these buildings are not unlike most of the buildings that are in that area. And I'll be honest with you, there's a need for this level of rent so that people can have a place to live. Jacksonville, rents have gone through the roof in a lot of areas that you can't even get into. You go down to Mandarin and Arlington towards the beaches and all over the place. These rents have really gotten up there. I mean, for a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home, for any kind of decent house, you're going to start at $2,000 a month just to get in the door of anything like that. So these typical places are like $750 to $900. 750 to 800, I believe, in these apartments that are being rented out. All these apartments are all the same. They're all 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartments, and they're what I like to refer to, and I've heard other people do it too. They're called hangar units. Now, what is a hangar unit? A hangar unit is an apartment where the environmental air control systems, otherwise known as the air conditioning and heat, hang out the windows. There's no central heat and air in any of these. So they're all hangar units. They're all really old. I mean, most of these properties were built back in the 40s and 50s, I think a couple of them might have been on up in the 60s, but they've been around a long time. They've changed a lot of hands. I mean, they've been sold and sold and resold and sold, and most of the people that buy down there in those areas, they buy because they're fairly cheap to buy them. Not always, but they're fairly cheap to buy them. And it's because that you're gonna have to pay a lot in order to keep them going, because the floors are all made out of wood. Even the block outside buildings, the floors are all made out of wood. There's only one of them that has one of these buildings that has the cement floor. The rest of them are all, the floors are all made out of wood. So, and they have, some of them have old plumbing mixed with new plumbing, and they have, old wires mixed with new wires and all sorts of things. So they're really a maintenance nightmare to keep them going. Now, there's two types of owners out there. There's a type of owner that will own a property, and they'll get tenants in. They'll charge them, $800 a month. Say, well, it's an $800 a month apartment, and they would be right. And then as things deteriorate and break and go bad, they say, well, let's try to find the cheapest deal. Let's get 3 estimates. All those things take time. And as I go through this, you're going to kind of get an idea of this. So the email starts out with sort of frustration. I get that, asking if I found a cash buyer because they want to sell the properties. They're just eating their lunch every month, it seems like, and they do. In this case, another little backdrop on this I think will help understand is that currently, and this is not totally unusual, but currently there are 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 evictions going on right now in these properties. 4 out of 20 doors, 4 of them. So that's what 20% of the properties are not paying anything and haven't for a month or two, because these people don't know how to manage money. They probably wouldn't live in these areas if they knew how to manage their money better. But the reality is that like I said, there's 20% of the rent is not even being collected. So if you looked at it and you said, okay, if they average, say, $800 a door, $750 a door, and you add that up, you have to take 20% of the way right there. and that's what 20% is $4,000 roughly coming off the top of what the rents could be. $4,000 comes right off the top from people not paying rent. Now, of course, we have ongoing evictions and trying to get people to pay and do the things that we normally do. And then if you add on top of that, there are a couple of these people in there that, you know, that every once in a while they'll fall a little short, but they'll pick it up again and stuff. And they're pretty good tenants, but they just fall a little short and they'll pick it up again. So you have income, rent income that fluctuates badly. Now, if we look at this, now let's just look at this. So in the letter, or in the email rather, I guess we get used to calling them letters, even though they're electronic letters, right? I think I'll read some of this verbatim like this. Okay, it says, "I'm trying to drill down on a new plan, and that's good. As you pointed out, years of ticky-tacking repairs, and I didn't use ticky-tacking. I actually say super glue and duct tape, and that's exactly what they've been going through. There are wall studs in these things. There's somebody works on the wall, and the wall stud will go about 2/3 of the way down and stop. There's no wall stud. It doesn't connect to the bottom sill plate of the floor at all. No bottom sill plate connection at all on that stud. And it'll be like behind a door frame, so the door moves when you open and shut it. That's how bad these things can get." It says, "From previous owners equate to unending repairs," and that's the truth. It says, which I'm going to assume will continue, and they will continue. I mean, when you look at the overall picture here, they will continue. And this is a variable. It's baked into these things. No matter what you do, it's a variable. And I got a solution to all this, so don't worry. There's a plan at the end. Hang on there. You know, I'm don't spoiler alert and jump to the end of this thing. Anyway, so it basically, it's been a rough few years here. There's been some major things that have gone wrong inside these buildings, and we're actually dealing with a couple of things right now that are fairly major, that have to do with electrical problems and stuff in the building, and it's because they're old. We just had to buy a part. We had to buy a part, an electrical component to one of these buildings that, had we have not been able to find one, and there's only a few still in existence. They haven't manufactured them in 35 years since they've manufactured the part. And we're able to find one in Michigan, and we're able to find this part and get it down here, and we're able to get this apartment turned around. But it took 10 days, and it is hot as Hades here in those 10 days. The poor lady was in that apartment. She couldn't run the window units. The refrigerator wouldn't run. The stove wouldn't run. It was bad news, bad news. It took us 10 days to get that part in, and of course, as soon as we did, they right over there. Even though it came on a Saturday, they still took off. The people at Works Rental Fix still took off, went over there and did it. We're going to get into them too. So that's the kind of thing that goes on. But that part, I think the part was like $600, $600 or $700 for this one part, and then we had to buy 2 brand new fuses to go into the part holder that we bought because it was melted. Now you say, well, and I think it was $1,000 or $1,200 repair, something like that total. But had we had not gotten that part, we would have had to, instead of repairing what was there, we would have had to have a complete electrical update, which no one would be willing to put back what was there because they just don't manufacture it. So that would have been sub boxes on all 4 apartments would have had to have been done. And that would, by the time you get pay for the permitting and the electricians and blah, 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 blah. An electrician did do this, by the way, but by the time you do all that, some of the people were telling me, this could be $5,000, $6,000. So we had no choice but to get it done like that because we didn't want it to go too far. So therefore, we have a problem, right? We have old buildings that have been beat up and taped back together and glued. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of what he's talking about doing. Obviously, he wants to try to cut back. He wants to try to cut back some cost. He has, I guess, a company that he either uses or has used in another city that's a good 2.5 to 3 hours away. I think it's about 3 hours, maybe 4 hours away. When I talked to the lady once about some other stuff, I think she said it's about 3 hours or so away. So, but I guess wherever they're at, they are able to do some repairs cheaper, I assume, than the people that we use. Now, we use a company called Works Rental Fix. Works Rental Fix is a very dynamic company because with Works Rental Fix, one of the advantages they bring on board is they pretty much have everybody you need, and they have licensing and insurance and everything else to do these skilled labor things like electrical and HVAC that require some licensing in order to do that. And the other thing is they're a 24-hour day company, and they're right here in Jacksonville. So if somebody has a water, which we've had a geyser in the front of the property before, just going up, it was like 40 feet in the air, and it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning Saturday, and they went over there and they took care of it and they got that thing fixed. They had to pay a little bit of a premium to do that because nobody else is going to drop. There's no time when you get that done. You can't say, well, I got to have 3 estimates. Now, this owner's idea was to try to send this company downstate work because they'll work cheaper. Maybe they would work cheaper down there, but they have to have travel costs to come up here. So he sent me some examples. Oh, well, first thing he says, now remember there's 5 buildings. That one of the properties, in fact, 2 of the properties constantly get cited for trash and garbage in the yards, and it's really not the residents. It's blowing in from down the street. The area that it's in is just littered. I mean, you go down there, they think you're riding through a garbage dump many times because it's just litter all over the road. The code enforcement, because there's a nosy neighbor, has called them multiple times on one property, and then they know me, so they call me on the other property too. So the first thing he starts off with is this lawn service. Now there's 5 buildings. They have to be mowed and weed eated at least twice a month because we're in Florida, and what's there is not really grass, it's weeds. It grows mile high in a minute. So they have to be done twice a month. So right now, currently, we're paying this lawn service $650 a month, and he wants to try to find a cheaper lawn care. Now, I had a lawn care service in there that was a little bit cheaper before that was doing it, but they quit. The reason they quit is because when they would go to the properties, they were finding they'd spent so much time picking up trash and debris and garbage, and I mean garbage like you dump in a garbage can, out of the property, that it wasn't worth doing, right? So they were a little bit cheaper. They were about $150 a month cheaper. So they were basically charging. Now get this: you got 5 properties, twice a month, for $100. That's $50 a time. That's $50 to travel in to get them done. $50 to go in and get it done. And you spend the first 30 to 40 minutes picking up trash and garbage or more. One time they went on this one property, and it took them about 40 minutes to get it picked up, 45 minutes to get it picked up. I'm not even kidding with you. They had 3 garbage bags full of stuff that they picked up. 3 garbage bags they picked up. And they never know what they're going to run into. A lot of times, this one property, there's a lot of limbs and stuff that fall out of trees, so they got all these limbs and stuff they have to deal with. There's a garbage area out next to the street they have to deal with, and the tenants, the garbage trucks throw the cans around, and garbage is there where they have to pick up the garbage in the ditch, because we got cited from the city one time for not picking up the garbage in the ditch. Even though it was obvious that a dog had strung it out, we still had to have it picked up. So we have to have this stuff done. So these people charge $650 for 5 properties. So that's what, about $125, $130 a property for twice a month. So that's about $60 every time they go in. $60 to go in and do the mowing, the weed eating. Oh, they trim the bushes if there's bushes around some of these buildings that have to keep trimmed. So they trim the bushes and the trees and stuff from hanging real low. And pick up all this garbage and trash. Multitudes of garbage and trash. So there's nobody going to go in there for under $650 and do this. They're just not going to do it. If they do, they're going to either do a bad job or they're not going to pick up the garbage. The last company that we had in there, they were cheaper, and I would have to have them go back and pick up garbage sometimes. And the guy would tell me, listen, there was so much garbage, we picked up what we could just so we didn't run it with a mower, but it's everywhere. It's all against the fence and everything. This company does a good job. We have had no problems from code enforcement since this company's taken over. So $650 is actually a really good bargain, right? And his idea was to have this other company come and do it monthly. If you wait a month and you do these lawns, these things will get 1.5 feet high. This is not like St. Augustine lawns we're dealing with here. This is weeds that grow like weeds. They grow quickly. It gets really big, and that's the best way. That is the best way to have code enforcement. Somebody call, and you have code enforcement, come down and put the little yellow thing on the thing, says you got 10 days to get this property cleaned up. And when that happens, then what do? I got to call this company out of downstate. They got to come back and do it. They're not going to do it. So that's just one thing. And now let's get into this. So this last month, there was some things that went on. There were some repairs throughout. There's 20 buildings. There was some repairs throughout those 20 buildings. And on this, he cites one of these things where it says, used Facebook toilet installed for $400 installed. And then he tells me this other company said that they would do it for $200, including the toilet. Well, the $400 did include the toilet. But if you looked at the actual thing, it wasn't the toilet. It was the toilet flange. What happened was this tenant calls and say, because they don't use it. Some of these people, they just don't use the portal. Some of them do, most of them don't. They're just not that great with emails and stuff, so they just don't use the portal. It's something they don't want to deal with. So they'll call or text me and say, hey, this is happening. This tenant calls me, and he's been dealing with it for a couple of days. He said, well, every time I flush my toilet, feces comes out from between the toilet and floor, squirts out. Yeah, feces. Yeah, I can imagine the cleanup job. Every time he goes to the bathroom, he's got to do a cleanup job. So, and that means that takes immediate action. You got to go and you got to fix this, because if you don't get on top of that, that guy's going to call Consumer Affairs or Code Enforcement or tell his sister, and then she's going to call Consumer Affairs, Code Enforcement, tell his uncle. He's going to call Consumer Affairs. In fact, this guy's uncle is actually a fireman, so when he tells him, you bet your tail that the city's going to get involved with it. And I got a good relationship with the city. I don't want to. I'm not going to be the one that has to try to defend why we didn't get right on this. You crap going out on the guy's floor. Anyway, so what happens is I call Works Rental Fix. They go right over, and when they go over, they find that the two things that happened, that the toilet had a crack in the base of it. Now this is an old toilet too. It had a crack in the base of it, so the toilet was going to have to be replaced. But more importantly, and what they said was that the crack in the base of it came because the flange was broken that it sits on. That's what bolted the floor, is the flange. And somebody had just barely installed the flange, and they nailed it to this wooden floor they had to go through tile to do it. It's crazy. And what happened is, over time, this guy's not a particularly heavy guy, but over time the toilet rocked around until it got loose, and with the tile and the age of the porcelain of the toilet, it's an old toilet, it cracked. So it no longer had a good seal, but that flange was the cause of it. So they couldn't just go over and replace the toilet, which when they replace the toilet, it's about, I think they charge us like $225 to replace the toilet. And, they get the oblongs, chair height, so that people can get on them and stuff. And so they go over, and then they have to deal with the flange. So what do they have to do with the flange? Now they got to dig it out, because somebody has done a terrible job with the tiling around the flange, and it's in there, and it's cracked and it's broken. But more importantly, they've used an adapter, because remember, these things are all subfloored. So below it, they used an adapter, and they used a rubber piece onto a cast iron pipe, which is now, it's terrible shape, right? So they have to put this new flange, they dig out the old flange, and they have to put this new flange in. But in this particular case, there was not enough room to go underneath the building, so they had to go from the top, and they had to cut the floor out even further to get down to where these people had done it. And the way the people had done it before is they had replaced the entire bathroom floor with 3/4 inch plywood. But because this thing had been leaking for a while before it started squirting crap out there, it probably been leaking water, and it just ate up the plywood underneath there. So they had to dig all that out, go down there, take the rubber boot out, which shouldn't have been in the first place. The galvanized pipe was just, the problem is the rubber boot where it was sitting on the galvanized pipe was just chewed up on the end of it, and eventually just corroded off, so the whole thing was able to move around. So instead, what they did was they go down far enough where they could find good pipe, cut it off, then they use the PVC pipe, and they put it on there, they glue it on, get it like it's supposed to be, then they bring it up through the floor, then they replace the wood underneath there, and they put a new flange in on top of the wood and screwed it all in nice and secure, and then they put the toilet on top of it. So they did all that for $400. They didn't just replace a toilet for $400, they replaced all of that for $400. And I doubt this other company would have come all the way from down there and done all that for $200. It wouldn't have happened. It just wouldn't have happened. Now, the next thing he mentions is about these air conditioners. We were able to find some, what we do is, and we normally wouldn't do this, but because we try to save some money in this case, we search Facebook. We try to find it. In fact, the guy that's the general manager of Works Rental Fix, he's gotten really good at doing it. He's Brian. He finds these things because he knows we're trying to save some money. The problem with trying to buy things off Facebook, you save a little money, but you don't get any warranty on them, so they can fail like that, you know. But Brian's found this guy that seems to have them in the box still and whatever. So we had to replace some air conditioners here and there. We did one. This one that was on here was charged out at $500, and it says, and then this other company said they'll put them in new, and the ones that we put in, by the way. In his email, it said used ACs from Facebook. These were new, just like that toilet. It wasn't a used toilet from Facebook. It was an in the box new toilet from Facebook. There's construction people, I guess, that have this leftover stuff, and we find them, or Brian does. So in this case, it says used AC from Facebook, but it was actually a new AC, and it went for $500, but they ended up charging to put it in. It says this other company does new installed for $400. Now, let me just draw a little picture here. For one, that's $100 difference. Number two, this other company, keep in mind, is down in South Florida, so we're going to call them, and it's going to take them a day or so to get up here. And I've got this 60-some-odd-year-old HUD dude in this place, or some older lady with kids or whatever it might be, broiling in this hot place for however long it takes them to do it. But that's not the difference in price. The difference in price is that when they go over to put this unit in, the window track that it had to go in was too long. So they had to, whoever put it in before used some sort of cardboard type material and put duct tape around it. Well, we can't do that. So they had to actually use carpentry work and get some boards and put a seal around the boards, bring the window down to there, and then the window with the old one was shorter, and the window wouldn't move up because it had been like that for so long. The window wouldn't move up, so they had to dismantle the window track to lubricate it, get the window to open down, so they could open it further to get this in there. And it's just things like that. And then that other thing that came up. So the other one that was in there before when it went bad in this one, it was because of where this was at. It had to have both AC and heat, and the other unit that was in there had AC and heat, and this one was going to have AC and heat. There's no way this other company is going to install an AC and heat unit new for $400 installed and drive all the way from Tampa to do it. They're just not going to do it. They're going to get up, they're going to find out it's got to have heat because you got to be able to qualify for HUD. It's got to have heat. It's going to take some carpentry work to get it in there. They're going to have to fix the window track. What they're going to do is they're going to tell you they're going to do it for $400. Then they're going to get up and say, oh, it's AC and heat. It's going to cost more and more and more. And next thing you know, you pay over $500 to get this done. That's the way they do, right? It's like when you see a car ad. They tell you, yeah, come down here and buy this brand new Volkswagen, whatever it is. You give us $900 down. It's $299 a month. Well, that's really not true because they don't have any of those in stock. Anyway, so we'll go on to the next one. So the next one, he says, is that says that would do those insurance painted boards. I'm not sure what that means. For the eaves for $200. Oh, I see. Because there was a situation where the insurance company had gone out and they wouldn't pass this building for insurance because the eaves had like a 6-inch, 2x6-inch eaves that was around it, and they wouldn't pass it. So those had to be fixed, but they had to be fixed like right away, right? Because the insurance guy was trying to get back in there. You got to get it done right away. Now, I think that the total bill came out, it was under $500. He says $500, but I think it was like $467, something like that. But let's just say it's $500 to do that. He said this other company would have done it for $200. Well, I mean, if you call another company who's wanting to get some work in, you say, yeah, I'll do it for $200, then they show up and it's $500. And the reason it was so expensive is because the part that the insurance company wanted to see fixed, there was a whole nother section that was missing. It wasn't even there because the wood had rotted off. So it wasn't just replacing the board on the outside. There was nothing to connect the board on from the outside. It was all rotted and gone. So they had to actually take the roof joists and scab onto them to bring them out to have something to bolt it on. And that was this one corner on the building had to be completely rebuilt because of that. It actually had to come out and go down the front of the building, and they had to re-scab in all the roof joists. There was 4 roof joists along there. Then there was another section on the other side where it was rotten, and when they went to replace it, they looked at it, and if you looked at it, it looked like the section was maybe 2 feet long or something. But when you went to look at it, the paint was holding another 4 or 5 feet. It was being held together by the black paint only. That was, and so when they were going to cut it and just try to section into one piece, again they were having to scab in the roof joist right there because they were rotted. The piece of wood had rotted because the roof joist had rotted. And so they go in, they go to take it out, and they figure they'll just cut it out. They'll put scab 2 roof joists in, just put that in there and paint it. But when they go to take the board off and they go to look at it, they go to cut it, they noticed it was nothing. You could just poke your hole through it. I mean, I was standing when the guy was looking at it. I went over there with him to look at it, see what we had to get done. And he just poked his hole in it. So I said, well, you're going to have to go back far enough that you can't poke a hole, because if you don't, there's nothing, you can't put them together. So it turned out to be, it was like 8 feet or something of the front E that had to be replaced. And there was probably 3 or 4 scab of the joist of the roof joist that came down too. So again, you know, one company from long away saying, yeah, well, oh yeah, we would have done that for $200. Why? We would have done it for $200. They're not boots on the ground. They're not looking at it. They're not there immediately to get it done. They don't know anything about the roof joist. They don't find out that the one piece that looked like it was a 2 or 3 foot long piece turns out into a whole corner section that had to be replaced. Or another one that looked like it was another 2 or 3 feet. It winds up being a whole corner section to be replaced. Oh, and then there was a part where the paint was peeling off. They had to be scraped back. And so when they go in to scrape the paint back, they go to hit with a scraper, and what happens? The scraper goes right in the wood. The wood was bad. I mean, so they cut this little 2 foot by 2 foot square plywood, and I really don't know how it's held in there. When I looked at it when they cut it out, I was like, I don't even know what's holding in there. But either way, they did get it fixed. It looked fine, and then they got to paint the thing. So yes, if you call up a company and say, hey, I got about 2 feet on one side of the building needs some wood replaced, and another place just got to scrape and paint. Oh yeah, I'll do it for $200. But then when they get there, it's $500, right? Now, this is the one I really like. This one I really like. This one says a breaker for $300. So there was a breaker for $300, and it really was for $300 for a breaker. Yeah. But what that doesn't describe is, remember the building I was telling you I was coming back to, which was the building that had the, you know, antique system. Well, in that building, there's 4 apartments in that building. That one that we had to get 10 days cost $1,000 for that piece, because we had to get the whole holder and everything. In this case, there was two breakers in there, fuses, but let's call them, that were in there. One of them was bad. We had to get one of those fuses. Now, you have to have an electrician do this kind of work, first of all. You're not going to have some, and this other company, I know them, they don't have licensed electricians. If you have a non-electrician person come and do this work and something goes wrong, well, let's put it this way, that owner, hello owner again, won't own that building very long, because somebody's really going to get sued over this. Somebody in the state's going to come in, you know, all kind of problems. I've been accused of running from the state, and that's because I'm smart. But this is a lawsuit waiting to happen. So yes, a breaker was $300 because we had to get a ancient history fuse that only a handful of places sell, and they know it. So they charge you a fortune for these parts. If you're going to work on old buildings, you're going to got to buy old parts. Or we could have went and changed out all the sub boxes, and again spent $5,000 getting city permits and everything to go and do this whole thing, and spent $5,000 and it wouldn't happen again. If you did that, this would not happen again. So yes, that's why there's $300. And this other company couldn't have done it at all, because one, the power went out right then. It had to be done right then. I can't tell the guy, hey, listen, I know it's hot as hell in your apartment, but my hands are tied. We're having to wait for these people to figure it out. And when they come up and they find out you can't buy this fuse anywhere, locally it's not available. And there's like a handful of places in the United States where you can find one. They haven't been made. The fuses were made a little bit longer than the fuse holder. The fuse holder hadn't been made in 35 years. The fuses hadn't been made in 20. So, and luckily they make a lot more fuses than the fuse holder, because the fuse holders usually don't go bad. That other one did burn up. Luckily, this one didn't burn up. This could have had the same problem because it has to do with the jaws. They get hot. Anyhow, so $300 for breaker, perfectly good price, only way to go. Then it says replacing a light for $150. That's right. That would be a lot of money to replace a light. But when you have to go in and find out what's going on, and then you have to pull wires, there's where you're going to spend some money, because it wasn't just the light. The wire had burned up going back to the light too. So you end up doing some electrical work on top of the light. Nobody with any reputation that's going to do any good job is going to show up anywhere for under $75 for a service call. Nobody. Especially electricians. Electricians hit the ground at $100 plus. So right off the bat, we got a licensed electrician that shows up over there. He finds the problem. That $150, by the way, I don't think it was quite $150. I think it was $146.49. But nevertheless, he goes over there, diagnoses the problem, finds out we got to do pull some wire, which he didn't charge for the wire. He has the wire, so he didn't charge it. But he pulls a wire through there. I think he said it was a neutral or maybe it was the ground, something like that. Or maybe it was the power. I don't know. One of the wires had to be pulled back through the conduit, which they have the ability to do that. These cool things he was showing me. It's like this snake thing that goes up through there. That's badass. It can go all. It's got this end on it, so it can go all around the corners. So I had to pull wire. Then he had to install it, and that does include the light fixture. Now, I don't remember which kind of light fixture this was. I think it was one of those boob lights that they get from like Home Depot or something. But that's another thing. He actually says that includes a new toilet for $99 at Lowe's. Nobody buys the toilet for $99 and then sells it to you for $99 because they had to go get it. So there's time, energy, and markup on the toilet. If a $99 toilet's going to cost you about $125 because they got to go get it. Gas is $5 a gallon. Anyway, so that's the story behind the light bulb at $150. It wasn't a light for $150. It was a light and some electrical work that had to go in for $150, including the labor and parts and all. So yeah, that's what it is. And then it says, oh, this is the one I really like. Hinges on the security door, $300. Okay, so there's a security door on these buildings, and a lot of them have these metal security doors, and there's a frame. Now those frames are put on with these like security bolts, and the security bolts are designed so you really can't get them back off, so you can't take the whole frame off. So you have to kind of deal with it right there. In this case, these doors are really old. The thing had rusted off. The hinge had rusted in half, and the door fell off. Old dude, drunk half the time, goes out the back door. He pushes the door, but it's funny. It's a funny story because he tells you he opened the door, and he tells me, he says, I opened the door, and I had my hand in the handle. When I pushed the door open, the door wouldn't let me go, and it just tackled me right to the ground. It was hilarious. And the guy's laughing, so he wasn't trying to look for any cash, but that's what he was saying. Which he could have, I guess, you know. So we have to in order to fix this problem, you have to have somebody that can weld metal, because it's all metal. The casing, everything's all metal. So you have to have somebody that can weld. So that means you have to have a portable welder guy come to the property. And this ain't like next to the road. He has to have the stuff that stretches out there, a portable welding machine, everything, stretches all out there, grinds it down smooth, you know, cuts the old whatever's left on there off, grinds down smooth. Guy, he has the hinges that fit because they're heavy hinges because the door's heavy, so they have to be a heavier hinge. They're not like the $5 ones you buy. He's got the hinges, everything, puts them on there, welds it all back together, sprays some black paint on it so it kind of matches the door, but it keeps it from rusting as well. And there the door is fixed again and fixed permanently. So that's the $300. And you know, you're dreaming if you think you're going to get it fixed for less than $300. Now, let's go to the part of this story that talks about why it had to be done right away. Because you're thinking, it's just a security door. Why don't I want it right away? Because this old guy, the first thing he tells me when he calls me is, he says, Forrest, my security door, the back security door of my place tried to kill me. And he laughs. He said, yeah, I have my hand in the handle, and when I opened the door, it tackled me right to the ground. And he says, when he laughs again, I said, what happened? He said, it looked like the hinges rusted off of it. I don't know. It's on the ground back there. I had to get up. I didn't even pay attention. I got back in my place and said, the hell with it. I wasn't going anywhere. You know, the kind of story like that going. So here's the thing. Next thing out of his mouth is, because this is in a really bad place, next thing out of my mouth, out of his mouth, not mine, next thing out of my mouth is tell you what his mouth said next. He says, yeah, those security doors, especially in back, are important to me because I'm just an old guy. I don't want to get beat up and they steal all my stuff. Now, what does that tell us? Could he have been kidding? Could he have been just trying to make it seem worse than it was? It really doesn't matter, does it? Because what's going to happen is, if for any reason, and I mean any reason at all, that guy has somebody break in his house before the company downstate could come and figure out that they can't weld on it right there because their circuitry ain't going to hold a welder in there. The first thing Brian said from Works Rental Fix was, maybe I can bring a MIG welder over and weld it. And I said, well, you know, this is one of those you had to go and rewire last year. And he said, yeah. And he said, yeah, you're right. There's not enough amperage in that box. It'll burn the thing up. And I said, that's what I'm saying. That's why you got to get somebody from outside the organization to get in here and get this done. So he made some phone calls and we found this guy. In fact, he was really the only guy willing to go down there, but that's a whole other story. But the point of the matter is, we don't get this thing fixed, and anything happens to that guy, this guy's sister works for the Duval County School Board. She actually pays the rent there. I'm telling you now, anything happens to this guy, it's going to be, man, $300 is going to be nothing. It's going to be $300 an hour for the attorney. Twice that probably for the attorney. It's going to hopefully get you the hell out of this problem. It ain't going to get me out of the problem because I'm going to say I tried to get a guy to fix it. Nobody listened. That's the first thing I'm going to do because I'm going to put that in an email or text message and say I tried to fix it right away. So that's why $300 there. Then it says drilling locks. Listen to this now. Drilling locks, $300. That's an exaggeration of drilling locks for $300. What that means is that there was an inspection done on these buildings, an inspection for sale, and we had to have the Works Rental Fix guy on, I think it was 2 apartments. It was at least 2 of them I know that they had to do this, where they had to, remember they have a security door and a front door. And because the people weren't there, couldn't be there, they were out of town, we had to drill the holes out. One of them, I guess, had changed the locks or something. So they had to drill the security door out, both locks out, and then drill in the other door behind that. So that's 4 locks, deadbolt handle had to be drilled out in 2 apartments, or basically 8 locks that had to be drilled out. Now, not only the 8 locks had to be drilled out, but then 8 door handles had to be put in. That's $300. I mean, I don't know where you're going to find that any cheaper, especially because I've got his guy here wanting to do inspections, and I can't wait for a guy to come from Timbuktu to do it, because so this had to be done. Now, his idea in doing this is says, these are things I think that this other company could do. He gave me this list that we just went through. These are things I think that the other company could do because they aren't huge emergency. Now, as I went through them, I think I kind of explained why that they may not have been a huge emergency right away on some of these, but like the flange, the guy's got poop going all over the floor every time he does it, right? So, oh, there was one more I missed. I digress. Let me go back. There was one that said a drain in a sink for $300. That is a mischaracterization of what that thing said. This one I specifically remember because what happened was when they went over there, the guy said that when he would wash dishes or something, that water would come out of front of the sink. Okay, so these sinks are primarily, there are some that are still out there that are cast iron, but even if they're cast iron, these sinks, the stainless steel ones, the drain on the bottom of the sink where you put your little stopper in, the pipes connect to, that drain's still made out of metal. And some of these are old. In fact, this one's old. There's a bunch of them out there that are old. And we've replaced a few of them in the past. What happens is that metal rusts, and where the pipes connect to it, around there had rusted, so the water was just pouring out around it. So when it says the sink drain for $300 had to be replaced, it was because that drain that was in there had rusted, and then the stainless steel around it, the sink itself actually had rust around the edge so that you couldn't just put a new drain in it, you had to replace the whole sink. So it was the sink that was replaced on there for $300. The whole sink. They replaced the whole sink. They had to put a new drain in it, the new sink, because the edge of it was rusted out. The drain part that goes in, which is separate, was rusted up, so that had to be replaced, and then connected all in. Of course, the other sink that went in, of course, is never the right size, right? Because they haven't made one there for a long time, so of course they have to alter the countertop a little bit, which is no big deal. They cut it out, they put the new sink in, but they did all that sink, drain, pipe connections, and I went ahead and told them to go ahead and put a new P-trap on it because the guy showed me the P-trap was, the gaskets and seals were worn out. It looked like you could see some corrosion on the side where it had been leaking for a while. So new P-trap, new sink, a little bit of carpentry to get it in, and new drain, the drain that goes in the sink, all that, including parts and labor, $300. Now, does that qualify for emergency? Because we know that the breaker qualified for emergency because the guy had no heating and air conditioning, right? We know that the toilet qualified for emergency because there was crap going everywhere, right? The ACs definitely qualify for emergency because their people are burning up in their apartments. Now, I will give it to you. The light problem, the light in there for $150, maybe that doesn't qualify for an emergency. The security door, definitely emergency because that's what the guy said. I mean, when you go through this stuff, yeah, drilling the locks out, it was an emergency. The people were there to get the inspections done. The keys that we had for the place did not fit the doors. And one of those places were keys we got from the original property manager. That guy had been there. We took over the place, and that guy was already there. The other one, I don't know how those door handles. That guy swears up and down he didn't change door handles, but we know he did. Who knows? Could have been the people before him. I don't even know. But the reality is this: there's nothing on this list that could have waited for somebody to come from out of town to do it. But more importantly, there's not enough savings there for me to have to deal with tenants calling me 50 times a day. Either, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Because they're baking in their apartment, or their water is going out on their floor, or their security door is hanging off the back, and they're afraid for their drunk self to be, I think the guy's younger than me, but he looks older than me. We got inspectors there. We had to draw out locks. So there's no way to do it any cheaper. If there was a way to do it cheaper, I would do it cheaper. I don't make any money doing repairs. I'm not there doing this stuff. I don't make any money. I don't get paid to do this stuff. Somebody else does. Now, if you've got success with another company in another city or something like that, and they've done things cheaply down there, that's because they live down there. They can go instantly to the property. They're not going to be able to come back and forth between Jacksonville. I mean, if you look at the amount of stuff that they're doing, there's just no way to do it. So in my answer to the overall email, which I'm going to give them this so I don't have to type it in, these two fingers get wore out. It's already bad enough my thumb gets wore out from texting. I have to use two of those. But my answer to this is that I do things with the most efficient way possible. That's the best way to put it. With the highest level of efficiency. And that's really what I'm known for, is the highest level of efficiency. I've been in my own businesses for a long time. I own more than just a real estate company. I own trucking company and towing companies and all sorts of other things. Even a barbecue sauce company, believe it or not. Efficiency and effectiveness are the two things that you got to have. Efficiency and effectiveness. It's not efficient to use a company or effective to use a company that's out of town to save $25 on a job. There's no way it's that way. And even from the prices that this company, I guess, was quoting on this stuff just off the cuff over the phone, there's not enough savings there to have to worry about the ramifications of not getting these repairs. I mean, understand this. These people are already living under conditions that the health department. We had one lady we were evicting. She called the health department. They went in and checked it all out. Now this wasn't this owner. This was another owner that we deal with, and the lady there was being evicted. She called the health department. The health department came in, and man, they cited everything. There was so much crap in there they cited, and that apartment that lady lived in was exactly the same condition as these apartments. And famously, this owner has told me before, about fighting City Hall, or about going up against the health department or anybody else. And I can tell you, that is a bad way to do it. And the worst part about it is, I'm not going to do it because I have a reputation, and I have to deal with them on multiple properties, not just these properties, but lots of other properties, including my own properties if I have to deal with them. I don't have any properties down here. I used to, but I got rid of them because I didn't want to deal with all this stuff. But I can tell you, the last thing you want is the city coming down on you and giving you heat. Or worse, you suffer from microphone disease, right? Where not only the city's coming down on you, but now somebody in the TV news gets wind of it. Oh, we got 20 doors. That's a slumlord. Because remember, the city of Jacksonville connected all these together. So if somebody calls for one place, now all of your places are now suspect. And they can say, well, we're going to go look at the rest of them. If this one's bad, maybe the rest of them are bad. Let's go look at them. And that's just something you don't want to get into because, what are you going to save then? Then you're not going to save anything. So you save a few $100s, here and there. Now, I promised some answers at the beginning of this. I promised some answers as to what you can do to make these more effective to own, right? We talked about effective efficiency. What can you do to make these a better owner experience in these apartments? There's a couple of ways to look at this. There's way one. You pour some money into them. You go and you fix ahead of break. Right? You do some things ahead of break, but the one thing you do is you go and you put centralized heat and air in all of these things. If you put central heat and air, let me just put it this way. There's an apartment, I won't give the location, but there's an apartment building that's a fourplex, and right behind it is an identical building. I guess probably at one point they were the same owner or builder or whatever. They're an identical building. In one building, We really push it to try to get $800 a month out of people. Usually $750 they'll be willing to pay because they're all hangers. They got window units hanging out. The building right behind it, which this building here, the one that's owned, it looks horrible on the outside. The paint's peeling off and falling away. The parking lot is not really there. It's sort of gravelly, gristly, grassy, nasty mess. The one behind it, fresh paint, organized parking, and central heat and air. These apartments we get $750, $800. These apartments, they're getting $1,000, $1,100 a month for these apartments. What's the difference? This one looks like you'd pay that much. This one has central heat and air. These folks over here are actually paying $1,100 a month or more. Why? Because these people with hangars, you got to have 3 hangars. They have 3 hangars, and the one hangar has to be a big one. That was another thing about the air conditioner units that go in. They have to be, the one that's going in the living room has to be big enough to cool the living room and the kitchen area, sort of a dining area that some of them have, but the living room and kitchen area, and then ease its way into the bathroom because there's nothing in there either. And then you have 2 separate bedrooms. So hangars have to have 3 units minimum, and the 2 in the bedrooms can be smaller ones. Those are not these ones right here where you're talking about the AC unit being $500. That AC unit was only $500 because it had to be big enough to heat and cool that big area because HUD says so, right? If you just hang it, if it's not HUD or anything, or you don't care about that, I mean, if you buy a new window unit, this is the way I look at it too. Let's say there wasn't a HUD person in there, and so we don't buy the heated unit. We buy the one that's a little bit less. They're about $100 less without HUD. I mean, without heat. Still has to be big enough to be able to cool that size area. So you're talking 7,000, 8,000 BTU to cool that area, minimum really. I mean, you could probably do it with a 6, but as hot as it's been, these things are not insulated. They don't have double pane glass. They're east-west buildings, so as soon as the sun pops over that other building, thank God behind it shields it, but as soon as the sun pops over, it beams in the front windows of this place like you would believe. These people don't have blinds. They have curtains, which doesn't stop the heat. I mean, they're going to struggle, right? But let's say you save $100 and you go in there, instead of spending $500, you spend $400 on one because you got to have big enough. Let's say you do that. Now what happens? That person moves out, is evicted, dies, happened one time. That person does that, and then you advertise it, and somebody comes in and says, listen, I've got a HUD voucher, and in this area is $875. Wow, I'd love to have that person in a hangar unit. Are you kidding me? HUD comes in and says, you got to have a unit. So now we've just spent $400 buying a non-heated unit, and we have to take that out, save it, and buy the $500 unit anyway. So why not just have the $500 units when you replace them? Why not just have those in areas that you know you already have a HUD in that you could, and so you have to replace because the HUD guy's in there to begin with. So that's my point. There's not one dime, not one penny that has been spent more than it had to be. The reason I lean so hard on Works Rental Fix is they are 24 hours a day. They're a call away. We give them all kinds of business, not just business from this particular owner's properties, but lots of other properties. They do a fantastic job. They call the tenants. They speak with the tenants. They organize things. They'll schedule things. They speak really good English. So there's no problem. There's no language barriers there. They just do a really good job. And if you try to quote them on everything they do, could you save some money on some individual things? Absolutely. Sure you could. But the minute I pull back from them and I start using another company out of town, these guys are not going to give me the pricing they're going to give me, right? Because why would they? They don't do as much work. So, and I'm not saying their prices are going to go up, but if they're only responding to emergencies, I'm not giving them any of the cream, I'm just giving them the bad stuff. What do you think is going to happen? And then, so what am I supposed to do? Then rely on a company out of town when I have a company here that's 24 hours a day, does fantastic work, and does it. Now, back to solutions. You either spend some money in these units, bring them up to snuff with the stuff that's around there. There's plenty of stuff that's renting well over what these units are, but it's way beyond what this is. Now, yes, if you spend some money and you throw whatever it costs to put those units in there, one of the potential buyers and I had a long conversation about this, and they worked up some numbers, and they were going to do this. They were going to do that, but of course they couldn't afford to get the money down to buy it or whatever they were, right? But the reality is, you will recoup that investment. You'll have less problems getting renters because when the renter comes in and sees it, right? When the renter comes in and sees it, they like it. It looks good. They're happy with it. Everything is working out fine with them. It's one of these things where you're going to be way better off with this than not having this. And so that's why my suggestion is to fix them up. Now the second thing is we can raise the rent, and there is some room to raise the rent. There's just not a lot of room to raise the rent. And the reason there's not a lot of room to raise the rent is because we have hangers on all these things. There's problems in there. They deal with this stuff. So there's not a lot of room there. We could try to bring some of these rents up because most everybody is on month to month right now. So we can try to do that too. But the reality is that they're only going to be worth what they're going to be worth in the condition that they're in right now. You know, it's a competitive market. We can't ask $1,000 per month, $1,100 a month when they can go right behind that building. So you have a couple of problems there. You have buildings that are tough to deal with and have a lot of work. You have tenants that haven't paid. We got to get rid of them and get some tenants that are paying. And so because of those factors, that's why you're seeing this low. And then we need to spend the money to make them more valuable so we can get more. Heck, painting the building alone is going to make them more valuable, and fixing the parking lot up so you can have that. There's this one particular building, it starts with a W, so the person knows what this is. The other one starts with a 2, by the way. Both of those buildings, the paint is shot. The one building with the W, that one is just, man, it is just dirty as it gets. It's not an attractive place. It's not an attractive place. But anyway, those are my opinions. You can send me an email back if you want to on those opinions. Obviously, we work for you on this. We'll do whatever you want. I am not going to have a bad reputation. I'm not going to have microphone disease. I'm not going to deal with the city. I'm going to have a good reputation with them. We're not going to get into that. That's not going to happen. We're not going to put people in danger and all these other things just to save a few dollars. It's just not going to work. I'm all about you making money. I really want you to make money on the properties. But again, we can raise the rent and get some of it back. You know, we could probably get $50 a month out of each one at least, and get some of it back. But we got to give them something. We could get $200 a month, maybe even $250 a month in some cases more if we spend some money in the buildings and turn these into centralized units. So send me an email back. I know this is a heck of a long video for people that like to watch my 10 or 15 minuters, but it was riveting and you know it. Thanks for watching.